with the graphic. Loser. Bring up the killer graphic. Cue the effect. Stand by. Cue up.
Welcome once again to Hometown Movies. My name is Michael Kelly, and I'm your host for this look at the filmmaker here in the Flint community. Our guest tonight is Jerry Humphrey. Jerry is the co-host and co-producer of a program here on Comcast Cablevision called Take No Prisoners. Jerry, thanks for coming by.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here.
What time is Take No Prisoners on?
It's on at 9 o'clock. Usually like the first and third Tuesday of the month. We run the show twice a month on Tuesdays. There's 2 weeks in between, and it runs for an hour. So,
for somebody that hasn't seen it, what does Take No Prisoners have?
Mostly Take No Prisoners is music and humor, and we're very serious technically about what we do and the product that we put out, but it's kind of an offbeat, off-the-wall approach. We try to have a lot of fun. Basically what we do is it's an hour long, and we have approximately 40 minutes worth of music that has been shot, so far down at the Capitol Theater in Flint. And we try to get a big crowd in there so that there's a good crowd response and good interplay between the band and the participants, the audience, which then at some point usually become participants.
Yeah.
And then we split that up within the show, and we try to have like 3 short little interview segments so that we can introduce the audience to the band and let them know that there's another side of them besides just a bunch of crazy rock and rollers. But we have some comedy segments in there, and it's to have fun. We try to live with the philosophy of rock and roll and find out where the edges are and try to change and be innovative. And it's not normal TV. But
Where did it come from? Where did it start?
Where did the show start? Well, I guess it all goes back to the Take No Prisoners, the radio show, which has been on for almost 9 years.
It's still running now?
It's still running, yeah. I co-host that on Saturday nights at midnight on WFBE for all you people out there that like alternative music.
That's 95.1 FM, I'll mention.
Your radio dial.
It's one that's produced shows on FBE for about 12 years now. You always got to get the call letters in and the number.
And it's emblazed in your mind, but it goes on with public access, the public radio. It's a good opportunity for people in the community to get their show on the air and offer alternative type of programming. But I guess about 9 years ago, Ben Hamper was writing for, at that time, I don't know if it was the Flint Voice or it had changed over to the Michigan Voice, but Michael Moore's publication, doing record reviews and doing alternative music, things that were a little underground, that wasn't stuff that wasn't mainstream. And Michael Moore found a lot of it to be humorous, to odd names and bizarre song titles and band names in that, and was asking Ben about it and was not familiar with it. And Ben said it'd be great to have the stuff on the air, and Michael said he would approach some of the people at FBE, and that's basically how it started. Ben Hamper co-hosted the show for years, and with Jim McDonald mostly, and then I came on about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it had a cult following that had developed over the years, featuring alternative music. So about a year and a half ago, I'd been out shooting videos of some of the area bands. I've been working with area bands, producing, recording, promoting shows, and just kind of getting to know them, going to shows. And I took a video camera out a couple of times and shot just for my own pleasure, and thought, after watching the footage, this would be nice to have this on TV. And of course, public access is the natural avenue, and took some classes and met Steve Hester, and Steve was, we seemed to see eye to eye on things, and he liked the idea and the concept. And I thought that bringing along the Take No Prisoners audience from the radio to the TV would help. And then bringing along Ben Hamper, who's an author, and I thought it would contribute to the writing of the show, and so far it has. He knows music, and she's got a good sense of humor, and we work well together.
Sheriff, this autopsy report on Paula Larmer is disturbing to say the least.
Well, after viewing the corpse, I'd say it was a safe bet she didn't die from gout.
Hardly. I wouldn't have wished this kind of overkill on the idiot responsible for Kinsley, Starsky, and Hutch. This is truly gruesome. For instance, it says here that Paula Larmer died a virgin. Gee. However, according to the coroner's report, she wasn't buried that way.
Oh my God.
Sheriff, I think it's time we consulted the log.
It's interesting you mentioned Steve Hester and Ben Hamper, both of whom have been on our show before. It sort of reflects the, I think, the supportive nature of the art community here in Flint. It is not a restrictive sort of system that holds people out. I think, if anything, and I think the poets and the writers and the painters all have the same sort of attitude in this town, that if you're interested, well, brother, come on in. You know, I mean, we'd love to have you. And if you want to do something, tell us about it. And if we can help, we'd like to help.
Yeah, Steve was real receptive to my ideas, and when you start talking about putting live rock music on TV, and you're talking about live rock music, which is very unpredictable, even though he was a fan of rock music, he was a little, he didn't just plunge into it, but I was lucky that I hooked up with him, that he was receptive at all, because I thought, well, nobody's going to listen to that crazy idea.
It's interesting, the idea that you have the shows at the Capitol occasionally. Because any of us that work in public access or public radio or alternative journalism or any of those sort of outlets, a lot of the time it feels like we're sort of putting our message out to a very small audience. So the 3 or 4 people we know that may read or watch what we do. It's interesting, the thought of actually having a chunk of your audience show up someplace, physically be there. What kind of comments do you get from people who maybe you see at a concert or you just see around town, who listen to the radio show or watch the TV show?
They like the fact that somebody is supporting what they're doing. The bands, because the bands in the audience are one and the same. Because the bands, when they're not playing, are part of the audience, and people are really supportive. They're glad to see, because the Flint music scene has a lot of talent. I think, again, when I go back to the history of the show, I know 3 or 4 years ago, going into a place called Wyatt Earp Records.
Yeah, I remember.
On Corunna Road, who underwrote or has been underwriting the radio show for years. He specializes in alternative music, and he still does. He has tapes in there of area bands that from all qualities of recording, from a ghetto blaster to an 8-track studio or whatever. And I used to go in there and buy whatever was happening locally, and listen to it and think, well, this is great stuff. Why doesn't somebody do something about this? And Doug Earp, the owner, kept saying, well, you do something about it. You do something about it. And after a while, I thought, well, somebody's going to, and that's basically, was the whole philosophy. Was there's a lot of talent in Flint, and the people are really appreciative. The bands are, the people, they like to see themselves on TV because we take a lot of crowd shots, and the whole atmosphere of live rock is one of of audience participation. The band needs the feedback, and the audience will run up on stage and dive off, or run up and intermingle with the band. And we've had a lot of that during the tapings, because people like to see themselves on TV.
So many people living without. See so many people living without, but I got it. 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 Faith, 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 faith.
It's not the band is some gods that you can't touch or whatever. It's just this. It brings the whole scene together.
I can remember the impact radio had on me when I was young, and the being off at a boarding school out in the country at 14 or so, and having the radio on against the rules late at night and listening to FM programs kind of scratch you from the distance, rhythm and blues from Philadelphia, or folk out of the Washington, D.C. area, or jazz shows out of New York coming crackling through the ether at night, and the sense of identity and the way it would overcome that sort of adolescent angst that one has, Have you ever found people who came to you and indicated that your work was really helpful to them?
Yeah. And that's another reason that why Ben Hamper and I feel so strong about the show, because we both went through that same thing in the mid and late 60s. I'm dating myself, but I guess it's no secret. A DJ named Peter C. Cavanaugh, he used to
Peter C., yeah.
be with WTAC, always played progressive stuff and always promoted local, either at least Michigan bands, if not local bands.
Yeah.
And Ben and I both remember it's the same thing, putting your transistor radio underneath your pillow when you're supposed to be sleeping or whatever, and listening to a show that he had called, I think was Underground Rock or something, but where he played all this weird, bizarre music, and it literally changed my life, and Ben feels the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot of what keeps us going, is the fact that you are affecting people, because people come up to you and say, I thought all that existed was this stuff that I was hearing on the radio, and then all of a sudden you've opened up my entire world, and you don't forget that. It makes an impact on people, and we like when people come up to us and say that, that remind us that you've had an impact on me, you've opened my eyes up or my ears up or whatever. And it means a lot, because that's really the main reason we're doing it,
Well, what influenced you when you were young? What did you see that has an impact that maybe shows a little bit now in your work?
Just about anything and everything. I would say I can remember some of my earliest memories as far as visual things, as far as TV went, was watching Ernie Kovacs with my father. My father insisted on watching it. It was probably the only show that he was adamant about watching. Anything else, it was what was the family decided. But we had to watch Ernie Kovacs, and the experimental things that he was doing on television. They were phenomenal. He didn't care where the edge was. He didn't care what the masses wanted. He went with what Ernie Kovacs wanted. He experimented. And he experimented a lot with music, too. I mean, he used a lot of classical music, and then there was the Nairobi Trio. Again, it was the use in what I saw and heard. And the impact it made on me was the use of, something visual, something audio, and not just one or the other, combining the two, throwing in some comedy, some slapstick. It had a profound effect on me. And then, of course, all males of that age, of that era, watched the Three Stooges.
Not all of us. Not all of us, but go ahead.
Slapstick stuff, and Laurel and Hardy, and then into the '60s was Laugh-In, and the music shows that were on back then. But it was all it was Leave It to Beaver. It was all that corny
the
stuff.
Culture, the environment.
Yeah.
Ernie Kovacs, I can remember looking at. I still remember some of the sounds and the gags. You've got some of that footage, don't you? Could you share some of that with us?
Sure. This is stuff from Rhino Video re-released. It was a documentary that was done in 1971, and it shows a lot of classic Ernie Kovacs.
All right. Well, let's take a piece right now and look at this little segment from the early days. What would you guess the time? 56, 58, something like that?
This show, I think, spanned his entire television career. I think was maybe from 51 to 61 or something like that.
Anyway,
about 10 years.
Ernie Kovacs. Let's look at a piece of it.
I'm angry. Somebody slipped a brown martini in on me here. Perhaps it's that sassy bartender using mascara again. To business. I have received here short communication from a student who says, "We have been studying history. We are studying the stories of Mr. Americus Vespucci and Mr. Christopher Columbus and how they discovered the world was round. Would you please explain how they did discover it was round?" Actually, it's not round at all. People are dropping off all the time. That is tasty, isn't it?
You know, it's amazing how fresh that looks today.
It stands up well because because nobody is. It's still pretty fertile ground, and I guess it's something that we're just starting to do with Take No Prisoners. I mean, the music on the show is the primary purpose of the show, and it always will be. But we, of course, Ben Hamper being, a humorous writer, and my sense of humor is exactly the same as his, and Steve Hester's is. That's what's great about it, because you've got these three people that look at things a little bit off-center, but the humor on the show is starting to get noticed. Ben's writing more, and I would like, at least eventually, to branch out and to do other things besides Take No Prisoners, and maybe possibly do a show that incorporates the same kind of experimentation that Kovacs used. And Ben and I and Steve have been talking about that. It's hard, as you know, with on public access with an all-volunteer crew, to find enough hours in the day to do all the projects that you want. And people look at an hour of Take No Prisoners or a half hour of your show or whatever, and they don't really realize the hours and the work and the preparation that goes into that. There's a lot of time spent in a little editing room, late at night, piecing everything together, and then you watch
equipment that doesn't work that well. Yeah,
I didn't want to say that, but you don't have state-of-the-art equipment. You don't have, everything available to you. But we've been lucky that we want to get the best results that we can. We don't usually settle for second best. And even though the show may have an air of being slightly out of control, we're very serious about being out of control. We're very serious about the fun that we have, and we try to technically be as professional as possible. And it tends to show. And we've been improving. And again, that goes back to the knowledge and the expertise of the people that we've been lucky enough to get involved with the show, because it's an amazing thing when you can get people to volunteer for something nowadays. It doesn't happen very often, and do a good job.
Let's talk about the Take No Prisoners. I want to see a clip of that. We want to show some of the stuff you're talking about. Give us an example of how you'd come up with a piece, how it would be kicked around, developed, and finally make it to the air.
Well, we blatantly steal. We don't we don't deny.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
Yeah. We draw influences from everywhere, and we're not trying to come on the air and say that we were the originator of this, the originator of that. We're totally original. We don't try to fool people at all. We use top 10 lists from David Letterman. Only we rechange, but we got the idea from Letterman. We do satires on TV commercials. We've done things on satires on KTEL Records. We've done satires on TV. Our latest venture, and it seems to be our most successful as far as comedy and audience response. We do a satire on Twin Peaks, and it gets pretty stupid, pretty insane, pretty funny. We borrow from, like I said, from Kovacs, the Three Stooges, and between Ben and I think what keeps us going, and I forgot to mention this as an influence, but I think this was around the late 70s, maybe the mid 70s, and I don't know how many people out there, if you remember this guy, but he hosted a horror show on mostly Saturday nights, sometimes Friday nights, but the Ghoul.
About the Ghoul,
of course.
Overday, of course,
yeah.
The Ghoul is the epitome of late night horror shows. Yes,
exactly. Now, the Ghoul was, the loosest operation, loosest production that was ever on TV.
Yeah.
There was Spike Jones things that came whistling out of the air. Soundtracks. There was weird hats that you wore.
Remember the Cheese Whiz flying?
People were sending weird hats. There was things he blew up with M80s. He had a frog that he constantly abused, Froggy. Take No Prisoners is kind of an offshoot of that same kind of mentality of the ghoul. The ghoul was God, you know, and and it's the same. Whatever happens, happens. You'll see microphones once in a while stick into the scene. You'll see people will blow their lines, and but you know, it's all just fun.
Let's take a look at it. Let's see a little piece now from Take No Prisoners with Jerry Humphrey and Ben Hamper and whoever else happens to be along for the ride.
Yeah.
Pa, I've been searching for you all day. Aunt B cooked up some coconut cream pies and she wants you to come home right away.
Who is this little grunt?
Listen, Opie. The Andy Griffith Show is taping on the next lot. This is Twin Peaks. Now, I want you to go find Pa and Barney Fife over there about a half a mile. Now, scram.
So what do I do with these pies?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You ungrateful pigs!
Whatever you do, don't give Goober my home phone number.
Do you at any time ever feel suicidal?
Only when I look at the bill from the funeral home.
I see. Are you still suffering from any recurring nightmares?
Yes, just one though. It's absolutely terrifying. I go into a convenience store to buy some cigarettes and beer, and the cashier's Pat Sajak.
Well,
I wake up screaming.
wow. Have you been able to resume a normal sex life?
Positively. As you can see, my dear love and I have never been closer.
I'm happy for you both. Does your dear have a little dough?
Let me check. Yes, she has $4.
And that's a piece from Take No Prisoners, a program that airs here on Comcast Cable, Channel 17, 9 o'clock on Tuesday nights, if you want to see a little more of that. With me tonight is Jerry Humphrey, who is the co-producer and co-host of Take No Prisoners. Jerry, where are you going from here? What is the future of the radio and the TV show?
Well, believe it or not, we're not satisfied with just abusing people with TV and radio. Ben and I are already putting together, and hopefully it'll be out soon, a small fanzine or magazine containing the same, combining rock and humor. And we'd like to do that, and we'd like to continue with the TV show. There's a lot of bands and a lot of things we'd like to do, and like I said, I would like to eventually have some kind of an offshoot where we can get into more just comedy and, maybe in half an hour of an Ernie Kovacs type of thing or experimental TV, just to have fun, because this is a blast. This is fun. It's more fun than I've ever had. The taping of the live bands, the interviews, the post-production, the comedy pieces. I love it all, and it's like this long, sustained, natural high whenever I get to work on it. I'll stick with it as long as it still feels good and is fun. As long as we're doing something, progressing. I guess that's the main thing.
I think that's one thing that sometimes people who are in the audience don't always appreciate: the attraction of the technical side, the sheer delight in sitting there and working the piece till it's just right, and doing the paste up and doing the layout and all the sort of things that people who look only at the talent side, the entertainment side, and they look at the individual who maybe is the host or the singer or the dancer or whatever, and don't realize that the people on the other side are having a whole lot of fun too.
Exactly. And I do this with music too, because I've recorded bands, area bands, made demo tapes for them, because normally it costs a lot of money to go into a studio, and these people are living from day to day, playing from show to show to get enough money to make their guitar payments or whatever. And I like sitting in a studio doing post-production work, whether it be audio. I can sit at a mixing board for hours, or the video or whatever. I love that stuff. That stuff is fascinating to me, and that was another reason I wanted to get into it. It wasn't just to put this stuff on the air, it was to learn that side of it, because it's fascinating to me to create something, to start with all these different pieces and pull it together, and somebody says, yeah, I like that, or I'll always remember that, or something. it's nice because the bands that we feature now have a video cassette that they can take somewhere to some club, to some record company, and say, this is exactly what we do. There are no overdubs here. This was done live, you know. It's just fly by the seat of your pants, and I like that. I like spontaneity and, you know, things just happening, and it's good for them. They appreciate it. You know, they'll look back in 10 or 20 years and say, that was great to have that opportunity. You know.
Yeah, and they have a piece of it because so much of what we do in our lives, you know, it's there for the moment, and that's fine. It leaves its residue in our spirit, but sometimes we forget. Literally, you can work on something for a long time or have a tremendous experience, and 5 or 6 years later, you don't even remember it happened.
I'm a firm believer in that, and that's why I've always experimented with photography, and I like video, because it's true. And I like looking back at, reminding myself just what happened. I mean, I can look at these guys now that, you know, can look back in 10 or 15 years and say, well, I remember when I had hair, you know, they can, you know, when I was in that group and I used to hop around like a, you know, like an idiot, and get a few chuckles out of it, because that's really what all we're trying to do, is we're trying to have fun. There's enough seriousness on TV and the newspaper and the radio and things like that, and we're just kind of a release valve for all of that. You know, we don't take ourselves seriously. The only thing we take seriously is trying to have fun.
All right. Well, we've been talking with Jerry Humphrey, who is the co-host and co-producer of Take No Prisoners, which is a program that airs both on WFBE Public Radio here in Flint, which is 95.1 FM. That's midnight on Saturdays.
Midnight on Saturdays.
And also Channel 17 here on Comcast Cablevision, and that's Tuesday nights at 9. And we hope you will stay tuned and watch that, and also be back with us the next time when we do Hometown Movies. This is Mike Kelly. Thank you for your time.